our planning phase. My opinion is that you should have at least five. I think 5 songs is a great number to have of compositions, songs that you have ideas for or started that to choose from. If you have 5 songs, I'd probably recommend that you identify 2 of them to work on. If you have 10 or more songs, if you have 40 songs, still, I think it's best to identify maybe 5 of them that you want to work on. A lot of songs to pick from, yeah. You probably want to have something with a song that has some tempo, and by tempo I mean that it's not a slow rhythmic listen. You want something that's kind of a little bit, doesn't have to be upbeat. Don't mistake that by me saying you need something upbeat. It just needs to have a rhythmic element to it. That doesn't necessarily mean that it has to have drums in it or programming, percussion. It just needs to have a feeling that makes the body want to move. That listeners are attracted to that. I think the primary thing that when someone first hears a song is like how it feels, and that has to do with the rhythmic feel of it. And the lyrics they're a little less important in terms like in first impression. Sometimes it takes a couple listens to sort of understand what the story is saying. I'm not saying that lyrics aren't important. I think lyrics are very important. But in terms of first impression, you should choose some songs that have some tempo and a nice rhythmic feel. There's the example that you're seeing here of Foster the People's Pumped Up Kicks. That lyric is very hard to understand at first. I don't even know if I understand all the lyrics in the song. And that's there as an example of, but it has a very cool vibe and has a very cool feel to it, and it just draws you in. And when you hear it, you just kind of know that's like, wow, there's something to this song. And the melody's there, but you don't necessarily understand the lyrics. If we're choosing 2 songs, might be good to have 2 that have some tempo and rhythm, but maybe the second one can be just a little simpler. And show a different side of you, just so that you're not overly defining your start, the look that you have as an artist. If you're doing if you've got more than 5 songs and you're kind of whittling this down to a 5-song EP, I would try to pick 4 songs that have these sort of rhythmic things I'm talking about, this feel. Not necessarily all the same feel. I'm not saying it has to have the same feel. It just has to have some momentum to it and a feeling of engagement. And then you should have 1 simpler song. Could be just solo instrument and vocal to just add a little bit of dimension to the impression that you're creating. To kind of give yourself an opportunity to break up the sequence a little bit, like the order of the songs. Okay, so we've talked about a little of this. 5 notes. Pick one that's easier. Yes, that's important. If you're just doing 2 songs, pick one that's a little easier to digest and has a little bit simpler of arrangement. Kind of talked about that because you want to show the different facets of yourself as an artist, and this is project yourself into the future and look back. You also want to. That's also why I said earlier that it's important that you identify where you want to go as an artist, at least in the far future, and then what your next steps are going to be, because it's up to you to create that impression, and it's also you kind of need to like sort of document this or create. Create this imagery in your mind and set these goals so that you're creating like a destination for yourself in your mind so that you can use it as a way to navigate yourself. How to select songs when you're alone. Yes, difficult, but here again, we're going to project ourselves in the future. And I think that like, it's different if you want to have song, like if you're the type of person or artist that you just want to make You want to make some recordings on your own and hopefully find some way to get it licensed to film or television. Well, you don't necessarily need to be a performing artist. You know, you don't necessarily need to hone that skill. You can just take your time and craft a recording, a record, and a presentation of a song that would be appropriate for that. And so by sort of projecting into the future and sort of knowing what your goals are, you know how to spend your time, make what's important in your time. If you want to be a touring act or a band, well, you're going to need to spend the time doing that. But you don't necessarily need to have songs that have certain arrangement criteria. Let's say if you want to be an artist that goes out and performs, the performance of a song does not necessarily need to conform to what would be efficient record making. I hate the idea that, but I still have to deal with it, the same as you're going to have to deal with it. The idea that we have to deal with Spotify skip rates, and taking the listener on this journey that is paced in such a way that it keeps that we're thinking about keeping their attention and keeping them engaged and making momentum and kind of making a splash, making a good first impression. It's sort of a difficult thing. But if you just want to be an artist that has these great, beautiful songs and it's not as important to you initially to have a hit single, or have a song that like connects on Spotify or on YouTube, and you want to have a body of work that represents what you want to do as a performer, but sell the recorded version of that, well, then your criteria is a little different. I hope you're following me there, and you understand that by projecting yourself into the future, understanding the kind of artist you want to be in the short and long term will help you determine what songs to pick, how to make records out of them, what things are important and not important. In selecting your songs, you're going to need to ask for feedback from anyone you can. Obviously, we're trying to approach this and it's like you're on an island. You got to do this on your own. But I mean, hopefully everybody has at least one person that they can share their music with and talk about it, and no matter what someone's opinion is of your song or your song idea or your ambition, it's their opinion. You have to take it with a grain of salt. I said, but take it with a grain of salt. You have to, don't be overly offended by it. Realize that everyone's opinion is valid, and that if someone says something that you hadn't thought of or that kind of maybe offends you or you don't agree with, well, don't get upset. Just sort of, it's important to be able to take it in and sort of try to dissect it and say, well, why do they feel that way? And if you can't ever come to a place of evaluation to where that any of that has any meaning that you can incorporate, well, then you can dismiss it, certainly. But all information is good information. If this is a journey, this is not going to be decided the first time you record something or the first time you write something. When you're selecting your songs, and you may be able to select your songs before you go into a demo. It says do a basic demo at this stage. You may need to demo your song. Maybe you have 10 song ideas and you know what they are in your head and you've got little notes written down, but you haven't actually recorded them. Make an iPhone recording of it. Make a document of it. It says piano and vocals works just fine, or guitar and vocals work just fine, or maybe you've got something programmed. Maybe it's more electronic based and sample based. Do an early version of the work. Do an early version of the work so that you can show it to others, so that you can listen to it yourself outside of your. And this is something else we're going to visit again. The idea that you need to keep taking yourself out of yourself and out of your environment and get out into the world and see yourself from the world's view to be able to put these things together. Make early demos, even if they're iPhone recordings or Zoom. Go on and on, whatever. Just make a very simple performed recording. If you've created a track and it's programmed, sing over it. Get a feel for the song. Get something down so that you can take it out into the world and listen to it out in the world yourself. It's very important it's amazing what will happen when you get out, you go listen to it in your car, or even if you just go listen to it in a cafe on headphones. Just being out in the world and experiencing a different way can teach you so much about it. It's always interesting to me, even now, when I'm working on some music and a guest will come, a guest of mine, a guest of the artist's, will come and they'll listen, and we've spent countless hours listening to this piece of music, and someone comes in and they hear it and you show it to them, and it's really interesting how I notice myself hear it differently in ways that not for the first time, but I hear it differently in ways that I wasn't aware of, because I'm suddenly I'm factoring in the how I'm perceiving their reaction to it. Most of the time people are polite, which is nice, but it gives you a different sense of awareness. So making these early demos are important for you to be able to share the music with others as you prepare to record your record. It might also be important for you to be able to just pick 5 out of your 10 songs, like record all 10, and then, how can I listen to this and kind of whittle it down? How can I get it down? Maybe even play with early sequencing and start to dream about how you're going to make a record out of it. It'll also help you figure out the specifics of the key. You can listen back to yourself, and in like 7 or 10 songs, you think your vocal range and ability to sing the song is really good, but then there's going to be a couple few maybe where it's like, it's too high for me, or I run out of breath, or whatever it is. It doesn't. Maybe you can sing it fine, but it just doesn't sound as appealing. And it's like, that's a good indicator. Well, maybe I should take the key down a little bit, or take it up. The tempo. Does it feel like it's moving at a good pace? And then the song structure. It's like if you have a long intro, it's like, does that intro keep everybody's attention? Or does it keep your attention for the amount of time that you would hope it would? Does the instrumental section you have in the middle of the song, you just kind of get a sense for how these things are working. It's the purpose of all this is a proof of concept with your song. It's about being prepared. You don't want to invite people over to your, like, let's say you get some outside musicians. You don't want to invite them over and start to try the recording process without having a pretty good understanding of where you stand yourself on your composition and making it into a record. You need to have sort of worked some of these things out. You need to feel confident and familiar. Everybody loves the idea of going into the studio and magic happening. Let me tell you, it does happen. Most of the time it doesn't. I've spent hours and weeks preparing just this, and because I've done that because I want to try to stay on point as much as possible. I want to try to give you as much information as possible. And if I was just trying to think of all of this off the top of my head, I'm sure I would relay much of the information that would be valuable, but I might not do it as precisely or concisely, or just as helpful. And maybe I might not feel as confident giving you the information because I really hadn't prepared. So magic in the studio, yes, does it happen? But typically it happens in situations where there's enough people to manage the situation and everybody's able to do their job. And if you're on your own, if you're the recording engineer, you're the producer, you're the artist, it's a lot to try and do. And the more work you've done prior, the better off you'll be. So proof of concept, give your record a name. This is just more goals. This is more projecting. This is more creating the contextualizing, just creating the concept and visualization that you have for your project. It's to know what your end goal is and be able to sort of ask yourself, am I on track? Is the work that I'm doing purposeful? Is it focused towards where I want to go? Okay, so our checklist for planning and mindset. Have you decided what kind of artist you want to be and the music you want to make? Do you have at least 5 songs? I think you should have at least 5. I'm just going to stop on this checklist because I just thought of something that I wanted to share that I haven't written down anywhere, but I don't think it's written down. But consider, when you're starting this process of consider picking a song that you can make a cover record of. And I'm not suggesting that you release it. I'm not suggesting doing that as a release that you would do. But if you can identify something, excuse me, I'm just going to have a little drink of tea here. If you can identify an artist and a song that feels sympathetic or aligned to where you want to go as an artist, you doing your interpretation of it, or maybe you do a pretty faithful job of it, of covering it, but it lowers the stakes in a way where it's going to take some of the personal anxiety out of it. It's a song that you know, others know. It's established, and because it's established, and you have sort of this template, and you have this affinity for the song, or you have what you feel as a relationship to the song. You can see yourself in the song a bit, or you can see that artist in your artistry. Going through the process of making a record of that will be hugely beneficial. Maybe you can do it at the same time while you're recording your 2 songs or your 5 songs. I think it'd probably be beneficial once you've sort of done some of this mindset and planning to sort of spend a little bit of time, even if you don't involve anyone else, just work on that itself, primarily as an exercise to take yourself through the process of, well, how do I start? How do I get this thing established? And how do I build on it? How do I embellish it, or how do I modify the arrangement? Maybe the key of the original song is not a great key for you. So there's another thing. You're going to figure out where it's a good place for you to perform it and sing it. Maybe you change the tempo of it. There's like experimenting, and the risks emotionally and personally will be a lot lower because it's not your song, and you already think it's successful. So you can guide yourself through this process and kind of get to the end and navigate some of the successes and failures you're going to have, and learn, and redoing things, and understanding how to record your voice with kind of a guideline that already exists. I think it's a really good idea. Hey, listen, at the end of it, you you might love it, and you might want to release it as part of your EP, or maybe as something to set up, just to kind of, I think there's a lot of YouTube artists. There's a lot of people that have become famous by covering other people's songs. It's a way to kind of draw people in. It's like, it might be work great as clickbait, but you could use it to establish a profile a little bit. You could release it, but I'm not suggesting it for those reasons. That's up to you to decide. I'm suggesting it because I think it's a really good way to lower the stakes a little bit, and not be trying to figure out how to do your own music right from the start. I think it could be really helpful. I hope you would explore it, even if you did even if you did a simple version of it, not necessarily a production version of it. I think you would still learn a lot. And then, so let's get back into this. Do the songs that you're choosing. Oh, I'm sorry. Was somebody speaking? Are the songs you're choosing show what you think are your most favorable assets as an artist? Are they in line with where you want to be as an artist? That's part of that stepping outside of yourself and looking from your goals and where you want to go, and evaluating the songs. Do you have at least basic acoustic demos, or not? They don't necessarily have to be acoustic, but do you have basic demos for your songs so that you can begin to evaluate and share them? Because if you're going to invite another musician in or somebody in to work on the song with you, wouldn't it be nice to be able to give them a working version of the song, and so that they can begin to understand what it is, as opposed to just showing up and you trying to show it to them in the moment while you're also trying to put microphones on them, or just figure out how to work a new aspect of your your DAW or whatever. It's just like, simplify things for yourself. Have you received feedback on your songs? Has your friend or anybody that you can share it with given you any feedback, positive or negative? Just, is there any way that you can kind of create some opportunity for you to hear some input on the songs? Have you given your record a name? And have you named your project? Have you figured out what your artist name is, if it's not your real name, what your band name is, what your producer handle wants to be, any of that stuff? Create an image of yourself to work within.